Hey y'all, this is John Trent from Batting in the Comics, and I have got another Brie Larson Captain Marvel story for you today, and this one is it's just so rich coming from her. So, Brie Larson sat down with Variety for a very lengthy interview, and she talked about her experience with Captain Marvel. And she specifically was asked by Variety's Kate Arthur, who said there are horrible comic fans who were rooting against it because it had a woman lead character and because of your politics. People made YouTube videos about wanting the movie to bomb. Larson would respond, "They did? Oh, I didn't even know." She added, "I don't have time for, the things that I have extra time to really look at are like, am I eating healthy food? Am I drinking water? Am I meditating? Have I called my mom today?" Then she would add, "More recently, I guess maybe it's because of Captain Marvel. I've had a lot of journalists be like, 'How often do you Google yourself?' I'm like, 'I've never Googled myself.'" And then Larson continued, "I've genuinely never needed to look at the internet to explain to me who I am. I am extremely committed to that in my day-to-day life. There is really nothing more pleasurable to me than observing my mind and interrogating myself." So, if you have been following any of our coverage on the website about Brie Larson, you know this is absolutely an utter lie. Larson is full well about her critics. In fact, while promoting Captain Marvel, she addressed the very critics that Variety's Kate Arthur denigrated. She told Fox 5's Kevin McCarthy, who brought up Larson's critics back in February regarding her comments about the amount of white men who would be covering her on her press tour. At the time, Larson had stated, "It's hard for me to comment on that because I don't know what the headlines were or what were said or what I said or what people think that I said." She would add, "What I'm looking for is to bring more seats up to the table. No one is getting their chair taken away. There's not less seats at the table. There's just more seats at the table." But she knew about her critics. It was literally brought up to her in an interview. My guess is she probably also had read some of those headlines and was reading some of those articles and was maybe even watching some of those YouTube videos about people criticizing her. Now, she doesn't admit that, so that's just purely my speculation, but she did know about her critics, and she did spend time talking about it and answering that question, and that was more than likely a specific question that was probably fed to her by the Kevin McCarthy's access to her. Now, this wasn't the only time that Larson would address her critics while promoting Captain Marvel. She would also respond via an Instagram story to critics who were criticizing her facial expressions, specifically her lack of smiling. She would post a number of photoshopped images of other Marvel Comics heroes and actors such as Robert Downey Jr.'s Iron Man, Benedict Cumberbatch's Doctor Strange, and Chris Evans' Captain America, with all the characters smiling in these kind of like intense scenes. The Captain America and Iron Man ones, I believe, were posters for their movies. The Iron Man one was for Iron Man 3. The Captain America one, I think, might have been for Winter Soldier. And then I don't think the Benedict Cumberbatch one was for a poster. It was just like a scene from Doctor Strange. So once again, obviously this time she's actively engaging and responding to the criticism. So she obviously knows about it, and she decided to respond to it via an Instagram story. Now, she didn't specifically like make a statement or give a speech or anything like that, but she definitely engaged in the meme wars. So she would also address that criticism about her smiling in an interview with Kevin Palawi. I'm probably saying his name wrong. So Larson told him when they were discussing it on the set of Captain Marvel, "That's just a depiction of the female experience. That's just what it's like." When she's talking about being criticized for not smiling, she's saying that's part of the female experience. And then Larson would add, "It didn't really bother me that much when I saw that was the reaction because that's how it goes." So there she's actually admitting she saw the reaction, she saw the criticism, and she knew about it. So, what did you say in this interview, Brie Larson? They did. Oh, I didn't even know. I don't have time for it. Except you did have time for it. You literally made an Instagram story about it. You talked about it in multiple interviews. So you're a big fat liar. You totally knew about it, and you engaged in it, and you responded to it. So maybe what's even more interesting is that she would actually do it again on Twitter. This time, I think it was after Captain Marvel had came out. Yeah, March 28th here. So that was after Captain Marvel. There was a I think his name was Joe was his Twitter handle. He's deleted the tweet. But Netflix had put out a trailer for a Unicorn Store like shortly after Captain Marvel. So Brie Larson was in the news. They were going to get a lot of press for it. And the guy was just like, this looks like meh. I don't really like it. And then Netflix decided to take the guy to task, listed off all of Brie Larson's accomplishments in a foolhardy attempt to dismiss his criticism of what of his opinion of the Unicorn Store trailer. Larson would actually dogpile on here, and she would be like, Netflix, in like a quote tweet. So yeah, that's her again. She obviously is aware of the criticism. She saw it on Twitter, and she would respond to it on Twitter in a kind of arrogant fashion. So wait, what did she say? I don't have time for it, Well, you had time to make that tweet, and you had time to read what the guy said, and you had time to read what Netflix said, and I wouldn't be surprised if you organized with Netflix about the response, because that's what Access Media and entertainment studios do with their actors. They organize with PR people. We saw that, this is not a reflection on Joaquin Phoenix and his behavior, but we saw that when he walked out of that interview with, I think it was the Telegraph, and a Warner Brothers press person had intervened, and it took an hour for Joaquin Phoenix to come back, sit down in the meeting. It's just how it happens. There's PR people everywhere, and they're communicating with Access Media, with with the actors, and with the studios. So I guess she didn't have to call her mom that day when she was deciding to pile on to this guy who just didn't like her Unicorn Store trailer. And then, okay, so let's get to this part here. So Larson also in this Variety interview, we're going to backtrack a little bit. She said, more recently, I guess maybe it's because of Captain Marvel, I've had a lot of journalists be like, how often do you Google yourself? I'm like, I've never Googled myself. Well, this is actually a flat out lie. Because while she was promoting Captain Marvel, she Googled herself in a freaking bit for Wired. Like, they do this whole bit where these actors answer the web's most searched questions about them, and Brie Larson was on there to promote Captain Marvel. And this is what she said in literally the beginning of the video. So this is the first time I've ever Googled myself. I didn't know it looked like this. So she admits there that she did Google herself. So she has Googled herself. So she's literally lying in this Variety article. And my guess is she's probably Googled herself more than once. And she probably Googled herself before this Wired interview as well, even though she says it was her first time. That's just normal. People Google themselves. I think they just want to see, like, I know I've Googled myself just to see kind of like what comes up when people search. Is it stuff that I will be proud of? I hope so. I will say it's been a while since I've Googled myself. I Google the website much more often just to see where we are at in the search results. But yeah, I think it's pretty natural for people to Google themselves. I don't think that's really out of the ordinary, and I actually think it's kind of strange that she's saying that she hasn't, because it's so kind of like normal now. But so what's actually really interesting is that in this Variety interview, before she even got to this part where she talks about how like she doesn't have time to worry about her critics, and she didn't even know about them, which obviously she does, and she spent time engaging with them. She actually, like, this was just really weird. So the Variety writer, what is her name again? Her name is Kate Arthur, told Brie Larson Captain Marvel seems good for the world. Does it feel important in that way to you? So that's just kind of a weird statement. Captain Marvel seems good for the world. I mean, it's a movie. It doesn't really make any kind of statements. It's just a hero kind of doing hero stuff. It's a very generic superhero film. I didn't hate the movie, but yeah, it was just really generic. To say that it's good for the world is just a weird statement in the first place. I don't even who talks like that about a movie. And then to ask, does it feel important in that way to you? That's just a weird question. These people are weird, man. Larson would respond, and it was a pretty lengthy response, but this is how she started it off, and she would be like, yeah, within reason, I've started paying attention, even in just the last couple of days, because I've been trying to really interrogate and understand my experience better. So I'm going to stop it really quick right there, and then we'll kind of like go on, because I think she goes on a little bit of a tangent afterwards. But right here, she's saying, I've started paying attention, even in the last couple of days. So if you're if you're trying to figure out whether or not your movie is like good for the world, I would assume you're looking at people who are criticizing it. You're looking at people who are praising it. You're looking at its effect on the world. Did it have a positive effect? There's probably different ways you could look at that. But you definitely would be looking at your critics. I would assume so. I mean, I would be looking at my critics if when you look at whether or not a political figure has done something good for the world. You look at their critics, you look at their proponents, you look at the work that they did. You have to look at it in kind of like an all-encompassing package. You wouldn't just be like, oh, I just look at the people that are praising me, so that's how I can tell whether it's good. I mean, she's in Hollywood, so maybe that is what she does. But it's just really weird that you wouldn't look at your critics if you're going to determine whether or not your film was good for the world. So she answered this question before she said she didn't have time for her critics and she didn't even know about them, when she was literally saying, I've started paying attention even in just the last couple of days. So that's a little contradictory there to me. Were you not paying attention to them, or were you? I mean, maybe you should get your story straight before you sit down and have another interview, Brie. But let's kind of get into. I just want to give you some full context on exactly how absurd this answer is that she goes to about whether or not Captain Marvel is good for the world. So she continues saying, I mean, I'm always doing that, but in particular, she's talking about interrogating and understanding her experience. That's just really weird. I guess maybe the word interrogate is just kind of a weird word. I guess you could definitely say self-reflection would make more sense instead of interrogating, but that's what I'm assuming she's really saying here. She's doing some self-reflection. I mean, I'm always doing that, but in particular, there's this flow state that I get into when I'm at work, and I've been trying to understand why that happens. I'm reading a book right now about that flow state, and it's with people in extreme sports, like people climbing mountains or riding giant waves, and the way they describe the experience is exactly how I feel when I'm on set. And I was like, how does that make any sense? Because I'm not risking my life, I'm not riding a 70-foot wave. I'm on set doing a scene with Michael B. Jordan, sitting on a park bench, and how is it that my mind goes to that place? So she's talking about her film, Just Mercy with Michael B. Jordan. So she answers her own question, how is it that my mind goes to that place? I realize it's because I've gone out of my way to choose films that have very real stakes. Captain Marvel really has some real stakes there. So a superhero film with a bunch of CGI, man, really real stakes in that one. Wow. Or when I'm sitting on the park bench with Michael B. Jordan, I am thinking about the people that are in prison at that moment who shouldn't be there. And that snaps me into that zone where it truly feels like life and death. It feels like there are stakes. So I'm not really sure what the plot of Just Mercy is. Maybe it has something to do with people in prison, but actors can do some weird things to get their emotions welled up, so maybe that's what she's kind of talking about here. We saw what Liam Neeson, we heard what Liam Neeson did to kind of get into the revenge mode. He taps into that previous experience that he had that it was drugged through the media for. So I mean, maybe this is kind of what she's doing. She's doing some kind of like method acting, thought experiment type thing to get her into like into a certain, feel a certain way and bring out certain emotions when she's acting. So she said it feels like there are stakes. And I think that's the key word there. It feels like there are stakes, which is interesting because she said earlier, I realize it's because I've gone out of my way to choose films that have very real stakes. And then she's kind of once again contradicting herself literally a sentence later, saying that it feels like there are stakes. So those are, I mean, one is like real stakes and one is feels like there are stakes. Those are two different things. One is your subjective opinion on what you feel, and the other one is actually having real stakes, life or death stakes. So then she continues like, I'm in complete connection with the reality. It's not that I'm living in a movie that's a fantasy world. It feels like the clearest form of reality that I experience, and some part of me must know that. And then she goes on to talk about Captain Marvel here again. So I felt the importance of creating a symbol when I was making Captain Marvel. But once I'm done on set filming, and then especially when the movie's out, I am here to allow people to know that there's an experience they can have access to if they want, but it's not mine anymore. You know, and Captain Marvel is definitely not mine anymore, and it makes me so thrilled that it's beyond me. It wasn't until I actually had the action figure in my hand that I was like, whoa! Kids can now be on the floor, and Captain Marvel can have unlimited experiences. Nothing wrong with that. It's just weird. Like, her answers are so weird and, like, esoteric. Once I'm done on set filming, and then especially when the movie's out, I'm here to allow people to know that there's an experience they can have access to if they want, but it's not mine anymore. So that, I mean, that makes sense from a film perspective. You're, as an actor, you're doing the job as the actor. People watching the final product are going to have their own thoughts on the film. You're seeing that with Joker. There's people who have different reactions to that film. And you see that with a lot of art. I mean, that's what art does. It makes you question. It makes you people have different reactions to different things. So I think that's kind of what she's getting at here, but she just goes about it in a really like weird, esoteric way. So that kind of just gives you a little bit more context of what she was saying. And that all happened before Kate Arthur decided to randomly inject that sentence about horrible comic fans who are rooting against it because it had a woman lead character and because of your politics. People made YouTube videos about wanting the movie to bomb. People did make YouTube videos wanting the movie to bomb. That's true. I think it's disingenuous to call them horrible comic fans. I think that they are comic fans who really were kind of liked Carol Danvers as a character when she was Miss Marvel, didn't like what Marvel has done with her when she became Captain Marvel. I think, was it 2012, 2013, around there. And then a lot of the things that Larson was saying were definitely, what is the word that they like to use? Problematic. They're definitely problematic, definitely divisive. She was saying she wanted less white people to be covering her on her press tour. She was saying she didn't care about the opinions of a 40-year-old white guy when it came to reviewing, what was that movie? A Wrinkle in Time. She just, she said a bunch of controversial things. She was saying that the movie was making a political statement. She was saying it was about intersectional feminism. Yeah, of course people were going to be rooting against it when you're injecting divisive politics into it. And to say that those people are horrible is just showing like how horrible you are by trying to like paint these people who have a different opinion on you. Maybe Kate Arthur needs to take a look at Ellen DeGeneres and watch that video that she just did, where she defended sitting next to George W. Bush and talking about how you can be friends with people who have different views than you. So I think Kate Arthur is definitely an example of a person who needs to maybe follow the example of Ellen DeGeneres. But anyways, I'm a little bit rambling here, but yeah, Brie Larson definitely engages with her critics. She definitely knows about her critics. If she's going to deny that, she's denying her past actions, which is just absolutely ridiculous. But I mean, again, it's what these types of people do. They always double down, and they always are lying. So it's just to be expected, and we're going to be here to call it out and tell you like it is. So if you haven't already, please hit that like button, hit that subscribe, click that bell for notifications so you get more content like this, so we can keep creating awesome videos like this. Your support is fantastic, and we wouldn't be able to be where we are without your support. So my name is John Trent, and you've been watching Bounding in Comics. I will talk to you on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for our Bounding live stream. It's going to be fun. Talk to you then.